Excellent. So Rein Paulsen is the FAO's Director of Emergency and Resilience. As far as I understand it, you're briefing us from Rome. So I will turn over the floor to you to talk a bit about the Horn of Africa drought, and then we'll come back for Paulina. Please, welcome and go.
Stefan, thank you. Thank you so much. I returned, in fact, on Friday from the region, having undertaken a mission to review the situation together with partners and to review FAO actions underway in response to this deeply, deeply concerning situation of the drought. So let me, in the interest of time, make comments around three areas. First of all, the current situation. Secondly, about the very small window that exists for urgent action now. And finally, the time-sensitive actions that are underway by FAO and others and what's required to face this situation. In terms of the current context, I cannot stress enough just how concerned we are about the drought that's currently impacting the Horn and what the impact will be if humanitarian assistance is not urgently scaled up. The reason for this is that the short rains at the end of last year, October through December, were extremely poor. And this represents the third consecutive failed rainy season with below average rains, all of which has then a severe impact on vulnerable households. And as we look at the situation through to May this year, through to May 2022, FAO, together with its partners in the Food Security Nutrition Working Group, we estimate that there are between 12 to 14 million people in the southern southeastern parts of Ethiopia, the arid, semi-arid areas of Kenya, as well as Somalia, who are facing now these very, very high levels of acute food insecurity because of this. A few quick data points just to underscore how concerning the situation currently is. In terms of crops, the failed rains at the end of last year mean, for example, that the overall cereal production related to that last rainy season in southern Somalia is estimated at being just 58% lower than the long-term average. And Kenya, if we look at areas of agricultural areas in marginal coastal zones and southeastern parts of Kenya, we're looking at crop production estimated to be 70% below average. So again, a clear sense that we are facing a very, very significant situation. In terms of water, most of the reliable surface water points, those that are usually resilient to climate variability, they've dried up. Kenya, for example, 87% of the drought-affected counties report tracking of livestock, which is now 3 times the normal distance for a dry season. I realize I'm throwing a number of data points out here, but it gives you a sense of just how significant the situation is. I have to say one of the most visual challenges that we saw was around the deaths of livestock. Very compelling. We saw both livestock and wildlife carcasses by the side of the road as we were driving, saw animals dying together with their farmers. And the numbers, I think, are quite shocking. Just for Kenya alone, 1.4 million livestock have died the final part of last year as a result of the droughts. Of highest concern is what's happening, of course, when it comes to children and malnutrition, and there are specialized agencies that can speak to that. But even at the end of last week, as I was interacting with colleagues from other agencies, recent data was pointing to the highest global acute malnutrition rates on record in parts of Kenya where I was. So the context is of deep, deep concern. Let me just say some things then quickly about the small window for action. We've been sounding as FAO together with partners the alarm since the middle of last year about how the situation was unfolding, and we are most definitely now sitting on the brink of catastrophe. We have a window to the middle of this year to June, which is a very time-sensitive narrow window for urgent actions to scale up to prevent a worst-case scenario. Agriculture needs a lot more attention. It's central to the survival of drought-affected communities. And these communities, I should say, have now been hammered by a succession of challenges. You'll recall the desert locust ravages that have taken place in East Africa. What's been happening with the conflict, what's happened with the ripple effects of COVID-19, and now the challenges with climate change and rainfall. So action is urgently required if we are to stave off a situation. I would say that we as FAO and partners are now watching with deep concern what will happen with this next upcoming rainy season between March to May, the main rainy season. If there are any challenges with that, our estimates are that there will then be 15 to 20 million people in acute food insecurity just as a result of the drought impacts. So we know what happened in 2011 tragically in Somalia as a result of climate challenges, as a result of rainfall and access issues, and we simply cannot make same mistakes again in the region. So what's urgently required to respond to this situation? Well, drought response, preventing famine, requires the right set of actions implemented at the right time in a drought cycle. And it is absolutely indispensable that we have joint multisectoral interventions across 4 key life-saving sectors: food security, nutrition, water and sanitation, and health. And all of them need to go together if we are going to prevent a desperate situation from unfolding. They have a multiplier effect on each other in a positive sense. This means, quite frankly, that as much as FAO needs funds, and we do need funds, and I'll get to that, it's vitally important that all of the organizations working in these areas of food security, nutrition, health, and WASH are funded and supported at the same time. In FAO's case, in terms of urgent actions, we require 130 million through June, this very time-sensitive window that I was referring to before. And those resources are to do 3 types of interventions. Cash. We urgently need people to be able to buy food until their production resumes. That's a key component of what we as FAO are addressing in the region. Secondly, I mentioned what I'd seen on this mission in terms of deaths of livestock. The second key component is keeping livestock alive. This is about securing, for example, milk production, which is absolutely indispensable if we're going to prevent malnutrition worsening in this already very fragile situation. FAO's actions, if fully supported, will allow us to provide enough milk for 3 million vulnerable children under 5 in the area for the next 6 months. These are very, very impactful interventions. Thirdly, we have to allow farmers the chance to secure a harvest. So key agricultural inputs, drought-resistant seeds in particular, are a key component of the response. And for us, this is about supporting some 1 million people in the region to be able to produce 40,000 metric tons of cereal. Again, I realize that there's a lot of numbers here, but really the key point I want to underscore is around the time sensitivity that exists for us. A final comment too, if I could, just about resilience before I hand back. I was struck strongly by the actions that government, that partners, UN agencies, including FAO and others, have been able to put in place to strengthen the resilience. I've given you some data points that speak to a deeply concerning situation. But colleagues, I would underscore the fact that despite the fact that we've had 3 failed rains consecutively, despite the fact that we've had a desert locust at significant scale ravaging this part of Africa, despite the fact that we've had these challenges with the ripple effects of COVID-19 and all of the other factors that you're familiar with, we still haven't had a famine at scale as a result of all of these things. And that is a testimony to resilient actions that governments, partners, and the UN agencies have put in place. But we have now, I think, reached the limit of what's possible in that regard, and we simply do need to make sure that we're scaling up a response, always with actions focused on strengthening underlying resilience of these vulnerable communities. So this is very much the situation as we face it now. Time is running out. We have this window through to June. We need to keep a close eye on what happens with the long rains, and above all, we do need support on an interagency basis for the actions that FAO and other partners are putting in place in support of government. So a very, very concerning situation, and I thank you for the opportunity to share a few thoughts in that regard today. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Rein. Edie Leder, Associated Press.
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. When you talked about driving and seeing dead livestock everywhere, what percentage of the livestock in the real drought areas are still left? And of the $130 million that FAO needs, have you gotten any?
Stefan, should I take that question straight away?
Yes, please.
So in percentages are difficult to calculate, but what I would say is you've heard the numbers I was talking about, 1.4 million livestock in Kenya. The number in southern Ethiopia is around about 240,000 livestock that have passed, that have died as well as a result of the drought. And as we were looking in communities, it was clear that there was significant stress amongst the livestock population. So this situation is comprehensive. It's part of the reason that FAO's responses, a key component, is focused on providing urgent fodder to keep animals alive, what we call range cubes. We're focused on supporting access to water for these livestock and key medical interventions to keep them alive. These represent important assets for vulnerable communities, and they're a key source of milk, as you heard me mention in many cases before. So it's vital that we support them, but they are extremely stressed after now 3 failed rains. And I have to say it was quite traumatic driving through communities and seeing farmers tending livestock as they were dying by the side of the road. So a deeply concerning situation. On the FAO appeal, we are receiving, so these are funds for activities from 1st of January through to the middle of June. We do have some funds coming online. We have pipeline commitments of about 20% of what we need, but a lot more is needed because, of course, we need to be able to procure quickly to deliver support immediately. So this funding can't wait until, for example, June to enable an effective response. So we do need more support, and I know the same is true for other parts of the UN family responding.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions in the room or in the chat? All right, Rein, thank you very much, and thank you for participating. And I'll ask Paulina to come up now, please. Thank you.